The monitors screamed in the operating room as Dr. Ellie Thompson gripped the scalpel with steady hands that belied the chaos ripping through her chest. On the table lay Nurse Karen Hayes, the very woman who had just posted that viral message exposing Ellie and Dr. Madison Reed as secret lovers. And now Ellie was fighting to save Karen's life in the most complex emergency procedure the hospital had seen in years. How had everything unraveled so fast? One minute they were two respected surgeons keeping their love locked behind closed doors, the next the entire staff at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago knew, and the judgment hit like a freight train. Ellie glanced across the table at Madison, whose blue eyes met hers for a split second, carrying the same storm of fear and resolve. They had coordinated this surgery under the worst possible circumstances, because Karen had coded right after the post went live and protocol demanded their expertise. The incision was perfect, the bleeders clamped, but Ellie's mind raced back 2 years to the day Madison first walked into the trauma wing with that confident stride and easy smile that made Ellie's carefully built walls crack for the first time since college. But Madison saw through the armor. One rainy night after a 20-hour shift, they ended up at Madison's apartment sharing takeout and wine. The conversation turned quiet. Madison asked why Ellie always pulled back when their hands brushed. Ellie froze, but the truth slipped out in fragments: the family pressure, the fear of losing her career, the guilt that never left. Madison listened without judgment, then simply said, "You don't have to carry that alone anymore." Their first kiss was soft, tentative, like testing if the world would end. It didn't. Instead, it opened a door Ellie had nailed shut years ago. They agreed to keep it secret at work, no public displays, no risks. For 2 years they stole moments in on-call rooms, whispered promises during long drives home, and built a love that felt stronger because it was hidden. Until Karen's post changed everything. Now under the brighter lights, Ellie's hands moved on autopilot while her heart pounded. Karen had been admitted with a ruptured aneurysm after a car accident earlier that evening. The irony burned Ellie's throat. The same nurse who had once complimented their perfect teamwork had somehow seen them kissing in the parking garage the night before, and decided the world needed to know. The post had exploded across the hospital's internal group chat, and then social media. Two of our top surgeons are breaking every rule in the book, and pretending they're just colleagues. How many patients are they risking with their distraction? By the time Karen collapsed, the damage was done. Admin was already calling emergency meetings, and Ellie could feel the stares from the circulating nurses. Yet here they were saving the woman who had lit the match. Madison adjusted the anesthesia with flawless precision, her voice steady over the intercom, pressure stabilizing. "Ellie, you're doing great." Ellie nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The surgery was succeeding against all odds, but outside these walls their world was crumbling. As the final suture went in, Ellie wondered if this victory would be enough to silence the storm, or if it had only just begun. The OR door swung open and the chief of surgery waited with a face like thunder. The recovery room was quiet except for the soft beep of monitors, and Ellie stood at the foot of Karen's bed watching the woman she had just saved breathe steadily. Madison lingered in the doorway, her blonde hair still damp from the scrub cap, her posture straight, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. They couldn't speak here, not with the charge nurse hovering nearby, shooting sideways glances that screamed disapproval. Ellie's phone had been vibrating nonstop since the post went live, messages from colleagues, some supportive, most shocked or outright hostile. Her parents had even called from Indiana, their voices tight with the same disappointment she remembered from 10 years ago when they discovered her relationship with Sarah. "We raised you better than this, Ellie," her mother had said back then, forcing her to choose between the girl she loved and the family that paid for her education. She had chosen family, and Sarah had left Chicago without a goodbye, carrying wounds Ellie never stopped regretting. Now history was repeating and the guilt felt fresh. Madison caught her eye and tilted her head toward the hallway. They slipped out together, walking in silence until they reached the deserted stairwell on the 6th floor, their usual hiding spot. The moment the door closed, Madison pulled her into a fierce hug. "We did it, Ellie. She's stable because of us." Ellie buried her face in Madison's shoulder, inhaling the faint scent of antiseptic and lavender that always calmed her. "She's the one who outed us, Madison. How are we supposed to feel about saving her?" Madison pulled back, cupping Ellie's face. "We feel like doctors who did their job. The rest will face it together." Their kiss was desperate, full of the fear they had been swallowing for hours. For a moment the world outside vanished, but reality crashed back when Ellie's phone buzzed again, this time a text from the hospital administrator, demanding they report to HR first thing in the morning. As they drove to Madison's apartment later that night, Ellie's mind drifted to the layers of secrets that had led them here. 2 years of stolen weekends pretending to be roommates, on paper while building a life in private. Madison had been patient, never pushing Ellie to come out publicly, knowing the scars from her past. But Ellie had started to feel the weight of hiding, the way it echoed the denial she had forced on herself after Sarah. She remembered the night she had ended things with Sarah, standing in the rain outside their shared apartment, saying the words her parents scripted. "This isn't who I am, I can't do this to my family." Sarah's tears had mixed with the rain, and Ellie had walked away believing she was protecting everyone. Now protecting everyone meant losing everything. At the apartment they collapsed onto the couch, still in scrubs, too wired to sleep. Madison poured 2 glasses of wine, and they talked through the night, mapping out their defense. The surgery had been flawless, documented every step, proving their focus never wavered. But Karen's post had screenshots of texts Ellie had sent Madison late one night, words of love that now felt like evidence. By morning the local news had picked up the story: Chicago hospital rocked by lesbian surgeon's scandal, and patients were already calling to switch doctors. Ellie stared at the ceiling, wondering if the love that had healed her was about to destroy her career the way family pressure had once destroyed her first chance at happiness. Madison squeezed her hand. "We saved a life today. That has to count for something." But as dawn broke, Ellie wasn't sure the world would agree. HR was a battlefield. The administrator, Dr. Patel, sat across the polished table, flanked by 2 board members, while Ellie and Madison sat side by side, trying to project calm professionalism. Karen was awake now, stable enough to confirm she had seen them in the parking garage, and felt morally obligated to report what she called an unethical distraction. Ellie's stomach twisted at the word unethical, remembering how their hands had brushed during that kiss, how Madison had whispered, "I love you," right before they parted for the night. Patel slid printouts across the table, copies of the viral post, and anonymous complaints from staff claiming favoritism in scheduling. Madison's voice stayed even as she explained the surgery metrics, how their collaboration had saved Karen despite the personal stakes. Ellie added data on their joint success rates, higher than any other pair in the department. The board listened, but the tension was thick with unspoken bias. Outside the meeting, colleagues avoided their eyes in the hallways. Old friends from the trauma team suddenly had urgent charts to review. Ellie's phone kept lighting up with messages, some from residents she had mentored asking if it was true, others from her sister back home, echoing their parents' disappointment. "Think of your career, Ellie, this could ruin everything we sacrificed for." The words stung because they mirrored the ones that had broken her and Sarah all those years ago. During a quick break in the on-call room, Madison pulled her close. "We're not the same people we were then. We fight this time." Ellie wanted to believe her, but the flashbacks kept coming. The night she had packed Sarah's things, the guilt that had driven her to throw herself into medicine like penance. Now the penance was public, and the community judgment was merciless. Social media comments called them reckless, accused them of risking patients for personal gratification, ignoring the fact that Karen was alive because of that very teamwork. That afternoon they were called into an emergency surgery again, a young mother with a dissecting aorta. The case was high risk and protocol required the best team, which unfortunately was still them. As they scrubbed in, Ellie felt the eyes of the entire staff. Karen's bed was just down the hall, and the irony weighed heavy. Madison's voice over the intercom was steady. "Ready when you are, Ellie." They worked in perfect sync, the way they always had, and the surgery was a success. But as they closed the patient, Ellie caught a glimpse of Karen being wheeled past the glass window, her eyes meeting Ellie's with something unreadable, regret maybe, or defiance. Later in the locker room, Madison leaned against the lockers. She saw a "save her life today." Maybe that changes something. Ellie wasn't sure. The past was pressing too close, the memory of Sarah's final text. "I hope you never regret choosing fear over love," burning in her mind. The scandal was spreading beyond the hospital, now reaching medical boards and potential lawsuits. Ellie felt the walls closing and wondering if this time the love she had finally embraced would survive the same pressure that had crushed her before. The hospital board suspended them pending full investigation, but allowed them to continue critical cases under supervision. Ellie and Madison spent the next week in a strange limbo, operating by day, then retreating to Madison's apartment to face the fallout. Karen had been discharged with strict instructions to rest, but her post continued to gain traction. Local news interviews with anonymous staff painted them as reckless lovers more interested in romance than responsibility. Ellie's family flew in unannounced, her mother's face tight with the same righteous anger from a decade ago. "We warned you after that girl in college," she hissed in the apartment kitchen while Madison waited awkwardly in the living room. Ellie felt 17 again, cornered by expectations. She had spent years proving she was the perfect daughter, the brilliant doctor, but the secret love she shared with Madison had cracked that facade wide open. In quiet moments, Ellie opened up to Madison about Sarah, the full story she had only hinted at before. How they had met in anatomy lab, fallen hard and fast, how her parents had threatened to cut her off financially and emotionally unless she ended it. How she had driven to Sarah's apartment in the rain, delivered the breakup speech like a robot, and watched the woman she loved walk away forever. "I thought I was protecting everyone," Ellie whispered one night as they lay on the couch, Madison's fingers tracing gentle circles on her arm. "But I only hurt her, and I've been carrying that ever since. I didn't want to drag you into the same mess." Madison listened, then kissed her forehead. "You're not dragging me anywhere. I chose this, chose you, knowing the risks. We're not repeating the past." Their embrace was tender, full of the quiet strength that had kept them going through 2 years of secrecy. But the guilt lingered, mixing with the fresh shame of public exposure. The turning point came during a late-night emergency. A construction worker with multiple traumas requiring both their skills. Karen's sister worked in the ER and had requested them specifically, saying Karen had asked for the doctors who saved her. The surgery was grueling, 6 hours of intricate repairs, but they succeeded again. Afterward, Karen's sister pulled Ellie aside in the hallway. "She saw everything from her bed, the way you two worked together even after what she did. She's been asking to talk to you." Ellie's heart raced. Confrontation or closure, she wasn't sure. Madison squeezed her hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together." As they walked toward Karen's new room, Ellie felt the layers of time colliding: the past denial, the present scandal, and the fragile hope that saving lives might somehow redeem the love they had fought so hard to protect. The door opened and Karen looked up, her expression softer than expected. The conversation that followed would change everything. Karen sat propped against pillows, her face pale but eyes clear. "I thought I was doing the right thing," she began, her voice shaky. "I saw you two that night and it felt wrong, somehow like you were hiding something that could affect patients. But then I woke up after surgery and realized you saved my life, even knowing what I'd done. That kind of focus, it made me question everything." Ellie stood frozen, Madison beside her offering silent support. Karen continued, explaining how her own conservative upbringing had fueled her reaction, how seeing their dedication in the OR had cracked her prejudice. She offered to post a retraction to clarify that their personal lives had never compromised care. The apology wasn't perfect, but it was genuine and it shifted the narrative. Within hours, the hospital board reconvened, reviewing the new statements and the undeniable surgical outcomes. Suspensions were lifted with a formal warning, but the damage to reputations lingered. Outside the hospital, the community judgment didn't vanish overnight. Protesters gathered at the entrance, some from local religious groups, echoing the same pressures Ellie's family had applied years ago. Ellie's parents returned home disappointed, but her sister stayed, sending supportive texts for the first time. Madison's family in Boston rallied with video calls, promising to visit soon. The real healing began in private moments when Ellie finally reached out to Sarah through mutual friends, learning that Sarah had built a life, found love again, and had long forgiven her. The conversation brought tears but also released the guilt that had haunted Ellie for a decade, finally loosening its grip. "I was scared too," Sarah had said. "But I'm glad you found someone who fights for you." That night, Ellie and Madison sat on the rooftop of Madison's building overlooking the Chicago skyline. "I spent years denying who I am," Ellie confessed, "but loving you taught me I don't have to anymore." Madison pulled her close, their kiss soft under the city lights, carrying the weight of every battle they had survived. Yet the journey wasn't over. The medical board launched a formal review and several patients canceled appointments, citing discomfort. Ellie and Madison threw themselves into work, proving their value case after case until the numbers spoke louder than gossip. Karen became an unlikely ally, visiting the hospital to thank them personally and sharing her own story of growth. The scandal had exposed more than their relationship. It had forced the entire hospital to confront its biases. Ellie felt herself changing, the late awakening she had feared for so long finally taking root. She no longer flinched when colleagues whispered. Instead, she held Madison's hand in the cafeteria one afternoon, a small act of defiance that felt revolutionary. The past still echoed, but it no longer controlled her. As they walked home together after a long shift, Ellie realized the love that had once been their secret was becoming their greatest strength. Months passed and the storm gradually calmed. The board cleared them fully, citing exemplary service and the retraction that had shifted public opinion. Ellie and Madison returned to full schedules, their teamwork, now legendary among residents who whispered about their resilience rather than their romance. Ellie had begun speaking at medical conferences about mental health and authenticity in high-pressure fields, her story resonating with young doctors hiding their own truths. Madison supported every step, proud and steady as always. They moved in together, officially no more hiding, and Ellie's family slowly softened, her mother sending a cautious card that read, "We just want you happy." The wounds were healing, those scars remained reminders of the price paid for years of denial. One crisp autumn evening they returned to the rooftop where it all crystallized. Ellie looked at Madison, the woman who had stood beside her through every confrontation, every flashback, every moral crisis. "I almost lost you because I was afraid to choose love again," she said, voice thick with emotion. "But saving Karen that day showed me the cost of fear and the power of fighting for what's right." Madison smiled, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Their kiss was filled with the depth of everything they had endured, the past influencing the present, the guilt transforming into growth, the judgment giving way to acceptance. The city lights sparkled below, a testament to the life they had built together against all odds. The painful redemption had been worth every tear, every battle. In the end, the exposure that nearly destroyed them had forced the awakening Ellie needed. She was no longer the woman who denied her heart to please others. She was free. As they stood together overlooking Chicago, Ellie wondered if the journey had truly closed or if new challenges waited. But for the first time she faced them without fear. True or false? The public exposure of Ellie and Madison's secret lesbian love ultimately healed more wounds than it created?